Most people think the top 1% are richer because they earn more. That's not true. Many people earn well their entire lives and still never build real wealth. The difference is not income. The difference is how they think. The top 1% don't chase money. They avoid mistakes that destroy it. They don't look busy. They don't look exciting. They look boring. And that's exactly why they win. This video is not about working harder or finding shortcuts. It's about how thinking differently, quietly and patiently, changes everything. The top 1% think about wealth very differently from everyone else, and the biggest difference is this: they are obsessed with avoiding permanent mistakes before trying to make big gains. While most people ask how to make more money, the top 1% quietly ask how not to lose what they already have or what they are building. This shift in thinking changes everything. They understand that wealth is fragile early on, and one bad decision can erase years of effort. Most people underestimate how destructive a single major mistake can be. Excessive debt, emotional investing, legal trouble, trusting the wrong people, or chasing opportunities they don't understand can permanently damage progress. The top 1% know that recovering from big losses is far harder than growing slowly without losses. That's why their first priority is survival. If you can stay in the game long enough, compounding eventually works in your favor. If you are knocked out early, nothing else matters. Instead of chasing upside, they focus on downside protection. They are not trying to win big quickly. They are trying to make sure they don't lose big ever. This is why they are cautious with leverage, skeptical of complex strategies, and uncomfortable with anything that promises fast results. They assume that if something looks too good, it probably hides risk they cannot see yet. This mindset is not pessimism. It is realism. Most people feel pressure to act. Doing nothing feels unproductive. The top 1% see unnecessary action as dangerous. They understand that forced decisions often come from emotion, not logic. By slowing down and refusing to act without clarity, they avoid mistakes that others make in a hurry. Waiting is not laziness to them. It is a form of discipline. They also recognize that intelligence alone does not protect against stupidity. In fact, smart people are often more vulnerable because they are better at rationalizing bad decisions. The top 1% assume they are biased, emotional, and capable of error. Because of this, they build safeguards. They use rules, checklists, and principles to prevent themselves from making decisions when emotions are high. They design systems that protect them from themselves. Another key part of avoiding permanent mistakes is simplicity. Complex strategies feel sophisticated, but they often increase the chance of error. The top 1% prefer simple, understandable decisions that can be repeated consistently. If they cannot clearly explain why something should work and what could go wrong, they stay away. Complexity creates the illusion of control, but simplicity creates reliability. They are also extremely careful about who they trust. Many people lose wealth not because of markets or business, but because of poor partnerships and misplaced trust. The top 1% move slowly in relationships that involve money. They understand that reputational and legal damage can be just as destructive as financial loss. Once trust is broken or credibility is lost, recovery is difficult. Another mistake they avoid is tying their identity to outcomes. When people emotionally attach their self-worth to being right, they stop learning. The top 1% are willing to admit mistakes early because they care more about protecting the future than defending the past. Being wrong is not a failure if it prevents larger damage later. They also avoid lifestyle decisions that reduce flexibility. Large fixed expenses, unnecessary obligations, and commitments that limit future choices are treated as risks. Flexibility is a form of wealth. The ability to adapt, wait, or walk away protects long-term success. Many people trap themselves financially by upgrading too quickly and locking in expenses they cannot easily reverse. Most importantly, The top 1% understand that avoiding mistakes compounds, just like good decisions do. Every year without a major error strengthens their position. Progress may look slow, but it is steady. While others are recovering from setbacks, restarting plans, or repairing damage, they continue moving forward quietly. This way of thinking is not exciting. It does not create dramatic stories or quick wins. But over decades, it produces something rare: stability, independence, and control. Real wealth is not built by taking more risk. It is built by intelligently avoiding the risks that can destroy everything. The top 1% also think very differently about time, and this difference quietly shapes everything they do with money. Most people treat time casually. They underestimate its power early and panic about it later. The top 1% do the opposite. They respect time deeply from the beginning, knowing that time, when combined with correct behavior, is the most powerful wealth-building force that exists. They understand that compounding is slow, silent, and deeply unfair in the short term. For years, it appears as if nothing is happening. Progress feels invisible, boring, and unrewarding. Most people abandon the process during this phase because they expect visible results too soon. The top 1% are comfortable with this delay. They don't need immediate proof. They trust the math, the process, and the direction. Instead of measuring progress by short-term outcomes, they measure it by consistency. They ask whether they are repeating the right decisions, not whether those decisions are paying off yet. This protects them from frustration and impulsive changes. While others reset their plans every few months, the top 1% stay on course for years. That uninterrupted consistency is what allows compounding to eventually accelerate. They also think in decades rather than months. This long horizon changes how risk is evaluated. Short-term losses do not scare them if the long-term logic remains intact. At the same time, short-term gains do not excite them if they increase long-term risk. Their decisions are filtered through one question: will this still make sense 10 or 20 years from now? Most decisions fail this test, which is why they say no far more often than they say yes. Patience, for the top 1%, is not passive waiting. It is active restraint. It requires emotional control and confidence in one's reasoning. Doing nothing while others are acting feels uncomfortable. Society rewards movement, not restraint. But the top 1% understand that most activity is noise. Real progress often happens when nothing appears to be happening. They are also comfortable looking wrong for long periods of time. When you think long term, your results will often lag behind those who take shortcuts. This creates social pressure. Friends may appear to be doing better. Trends may make your approach seem outdated. The top 1% tolerate this discomfort because they value correctness over approval. They know that temporary underperformance is often the price of long-term outperformance. Another critical aspect of their time-based thinking is patience with learning. They don't rush expertise. They read, observe, and think continuously, knowing that understanding compounds just like money. Small improvements in judgment made consistently over years lead to massive advantages. Most people want shortcuts to knowledge. The top 1% want depth. They also avoid the trap of constant optimization. Trying to squeeze maximum results out of every moment often leads to burnout and poor decisions. Instead, they focus on sustainability. A strategy that works reasonably well for decades is far more powerful than one that works brilliantly for a year. This mindset reduces stress and increases longevity. Time also shapes how they view mistakes. They don't expect perfection. They expect survival. Small errors are acceptable if they don't threaten long-term progress. What they avoid are irreversible mistakes. This allows them to stay calm during setbacks and focused on direction rather than speed. Most people want wealth quickly because they want relief. The top 1% want wealth eventually because they want freedom. Relief seeks speed. Freedom requires patience. This difference explains why most people quit early and why a small minority quietly pull ahead. In the end, thinking like the top 1% means accepting that time is not something to beat, but something to partner with. When decisions are correct and repeated consistently, time becomes an ally. When decisions are emotional and inconsistent, time becomes an enemy. Real wealth belongs to those who are willing to wait, stay disciplined, and let compounding do its work without interruption. The top 1% understand that emotions are not reliable tools for building wealth. They don't assume they are more disciplined or emotionally strong than others. In fact, they assume the opposite. They assume they are biased, impulsive, and vulnerable to fear, excitement, and social pressure. Because of this, they do not rely on feelings to make important decisions. They rely on systems, rules, and principles that work even when emotions are high. Most people believe motivation is the key to success. The top 1% know motivation is temporary. It comes and goes depending on mood, energy, and circumstances. If wealth depended on feeling motivated every day, almost no one would ever build it. So instead of waiting to feel ready or inspired, they design systems that remove the need for motivation entirely. When the system is clear, emotion becomes irrelevant. A system is simply a decision made in advance. It answers questions before emotions get involved. How much to save? When to invest? What risks to avoid? What rules to follow when markets fall or opportunities appear? By deciding these things ahead of time, they prevent panic, excitement, and impulse from influencing outcomes. Emotion loses its power when the decision is already made. Fear is one of the most damaging emotions in finance. Fear causes people to sell at the worst times, stop investing when prices are low, and abandon good strategies during temporary discomfort. The top 1% expect fear to appear. They don't try to eliminate it. They plan around it. Their systems assume fear will show up and are designed to function anyway. This is why they stay consistent while others react. Excitement is just as dangerous. Excitement creates urgency, and urgency leads to mistakes. Many people lose money not because they were unlucky, but because they were excited. The top 1% treat excitement as a warning signal. When something feels too good, too fast, or too easy, they slow down. Their systems force them to pause, evaluate, and often do nothing. This restraint protects them from chasing hype and trends. Social pressure is another emotion they actively guard against. Humans are wired to conform. Seeing others succeed quickly creates envy and impatience. The top 1% design their systems to ignore noise. They don't constantly check what others are doing. They focus on their own process. This insulation allows them to stay rational when the crowd is emotional. Another key difference is how they separate identity from decisions. Most people tie their self-worth to being right. When a decision fails, they feel personally attacked and become defensive. The top 1% don't do this. Their systems allow them to admit mistakes early without ego getting involved. A mistake is simply feedback, not a judgment of intelligence or character. This flexibility prevents small errors from becoming large ones. They also understand that willpower is limited. Instead of constantly resisting temptation, they design environments that reduce temptation. Automatic saving, simple investment strategies, fewer decisions, less exposure to noise. By reducing friction and distraction, discipline becomes easier. The goal is not to be strong every day, but to make strength unnecessary. Consistency matters more than intensity. A system that works at average effort for decades will outperform one that requires extreme discipline for a short time. The top 1% optimize for sustainability. Their rules are boring, repeatable, and resilient. This allows them to stay invested, keep learning, and make steady progress without burnout. Emotional control does not mean suppressing feelings. It means not giving them authority. Feelings are information, not instructions. The top 1% notice their emotions but do not obey them. They act based on principles, not impulses. Over time, this creates a powerful advantage. while others are constantly reacting to how they feel. They are quietly executing a plan. In the long run, wealth rewards calm behavior repeated consistently. Systems make that possible. They protect people from their worst instincts and allow good decisions to compound uninterrupted. Thinking like the top 1% means accepting that emotions will always exist, but building structures that prevent those emotions from deciding your future. The top 1% place an unusually high value on patience and intelligent inactivity, and this is one of the hardest ideas for most people to accept. In a world that constantly rewards movement, speed, and visible effort, doing nothing feels irresponsible. Yet the top 1% understand that unnecessary action is often more dangerous than no action at all. Many financial mistakes are not made because people lacked opportunities, but because they felt pressured to act when they should have waited. Most people associate productivity with activity. If they are busy, they feel useful. If they are inactive, they feel behind. The top 1% reverse this thinking. They do not measure productivity by how much they do, but by how correct their actions are. They understand that most opportunities are mediocre, some are bad, and only a few are truly exceptional. Acting on average opportunities wastes time, capital, and focus that could be preserved for rare, high-quality decisions. Patience, in this context, is not passive waiting. It is disciplined restraint. It means resisting the urge to act just to feel progress. This restraint requires confidence in long-term thinking and the emotional strength to tolerate boredom. The top 1% accept boredom as a cost of success. They know that if something feels constantly exciting, it is probably risky. Calm, uneventful periods usually mean that nothing is being damaged. Inactivity also protects people from emotional mistakes. When markets are volatile or trends are loud, emotions push people toward impulsive decisions. Fear encourages selling too early. Excitement encourages buying too late. The top 1% do not assume they can think clearly in these moments. Instead, they rely on waiting. By doing nothing, they give emotions time to fade and logic time to return. Often, the best decision becomes obvious only after the emotional noise settles. Another reason they value inactivity is that it preserves optionality. Every action reduces options. Every commitment ties up time, money, or attention. By staying inactive until conditions are clear, the top 1% keep their options open. This flexibility allows them to act decisively when truly favorable situations appear. People who are constantly active often find themselves unable to act when it really matters because their resources are already committed elsewhere. Most people underestimate how often waiting improves decisions. Time reveals information. Risks become clearer. Weak opportunities fade. Strong ones persist. By waiting, the top 1% let reality do part of the analysis for them. They don't need to predict everything perfectly. They allow time to filter out noise. Social pressure makes patience even harder. When others appear to be moving forward, waiting feels like falling behind. The top 1% accept that looking wrong temporarily is often the price of being right later. They do not need to match other people's timelines. They understand that wealth is not a race. It is a long process where direction matters far more than speed. They also understand that intelligent inactivity reduces errors more than intelligence increases success. Avoiding mistakes has a higher return than chasing brilliance. By not acting when unsure, they eliminate entire categories of failure. Over decades, this avoidance compounds just as powerfully as good decisions do. Patience also allows for deeper thinking. Constant action leaves no room for reflection. The top 1% spend time reading, observing, and thinking. This mental preparation makes future action more effective. When the right opportunity arrives, they are ready because they have spent years preparing quietly. In the end, valuing patience and inactivity is about respecting uncertainty. The world is complex, and pretending to always know what to do leads to overconfidence. The top 1% are comfortable saying no, waiting, and doing nothing until clarity appears. This discipline protects their capital, their energy, and their judgment. Real wealth is not built by constant motion. It is built by knowing when to move and when not to. The top 1% also think very differently about lifestyle, ego, and the need to appear successful. While most people measure progress by what others can see, the top 1% measure progress by how much freedom and flexibility they are quietly building. They understand that wealth is not about looking rich. It is about being independent. This single distinction shapes almost every financial decision they make. Most people increase their lifestyle as soon as their income rises. A higher salary becomes a signal to upgrade housing, cars, vacations, and daily spending. These upgrades feel deserved and harmless, but they quietly lock people into higher fixed costs. Over time, these costs reduce flexibility and increase pressure. The top 1% resist this impulse. They treat income growth as an opportunity to strengthen their foundation, not inflate their consumption. Ego plays a powerful role here. Many spending decisions are not made for comfort or necessity, but for validation. People want to feel successful, respected, or ahead. The top 1% see ego as a liability in financial life. Ego demands recognition now, even if it costs freedom later. They train themselves to delay visible rewards and ignore social comparison. They are comfortable looking average while building something extraordinary behind the scenes. They also understand that fixed expenses are dangerous. Large homes, expensive cars, and lifestyle commitments reduce optionality. Once locked in, these expenses force future income to serve past decisions. This limits choices and increases stress. The top 1% value optionality highly. Optionality means the ability to change direction, wait, or walk away. It is a form of wealth that does not show up on balance sheets but matters deeply in real life. Another important difference is how they define success. Success is not applause, attention, or admiration. Success is control over time. It is the ability to choose what to work on, who to work with, and when to stop. This definition makes many common expenses unattractive. If something increases status but reduces freedom, it is not worth the trade. The top 1% are willing to sacrifice short-term comfort for long-term control. They also separate happiness from consumption. More spending does not automatically lead to more satisfaction. In fact, constant upgrading often creates anxiety, not peace. The top 1% design lifestyles that are sustainable and comfortable, not extravagant. They want lives that can be maintained easily during downturns and uncertainty. This stability allows them to think clearly and act rationally when others feel pressured. Another key factor is humility. The top 1% accept that circumstances can change. Income can fluctuate. Markets can shift. Health can be unpredictable. By keeping their lifestyle flexible, they reduce vulnerability to shocks. This humility is practical, not fearful. It acknowledges uncertainty and plans for it rather than ignoring it. They also understand that freedom compounds. Each year of controlled spending and disciplined choices increases independence. Small decisions to delay gratification accumulate into large advantages over time. While others are constantly adjusting to maintain appearances, the top 1% quietly reduce dependence on income, employers, or external approval. Most people underestimate how powerful it is to live below their means for a long time. It creates resilience, confidence, and peace of mind. It allows people to take better risks later because they are not desperate. The top 1% see frugality not as restriction, but as leverage. In the end, real wealth is not built by impressing others. It is built by protecting freedom, by controlling lifestyle, ignoring ego, and prioritizing flexibility. The top 1% create lives where money serves them, not the other way around. This way of thinking may not look impressive early on, but over time it produces something far more valuable than status, true independence. In the end, building real wealth has very little to do with luck, intelligence, or dramatic effort. It comes down to how you think, what you avoid, and how consistently you make decisions that protect your future. The top 1% do not win because they are extraordinary. They win because they are disciplined in ordinary ways that most people find uncomfortable. They focus first on avoiding permanent mistakes, respect time and compounding, design systems that control emotions, value patience over constant action, and keep lifestyle and ego under control. None of these behaviors are exciting. None of them provide quick validation. But together, they quietly create momentum that becomes impossible to stop over time. Real wealth is built when you stop trying to look successful and start trying to stay free. It grows when you choose clarity over noise, discipline over comfort, and long-term control over short-term pleasure. These choices rarely feel rewarding at first, but they compound into something powerful. Wealth does not announce itself. It grows quietly, steadily, and patiently. And if you think like the top 1% long enough, money eventually becomes what it was always meant to be, a tool that buys you time, peace, and control over your own life.